New York bozo. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was one game away from the Super Bowl, the Packers beat the Cowboys at Lambeau and later today take on the Seahawks in Seattle. Hope they brought earplugs. In Paris, world leaders show solidarity in the face of Islamic extremism, but the Obama administration's a no-show. Governor Scott Walker gives his State of the State address as presidential buzz intensifies. Mitt Romney says he's thinking about giving it another shot. Paul Ryan says he'll stick with his day job. A growing call for investigations of misconduct, mistreatment, and incompetence at the VA in Toma. State Democratic Party Chair Mike Tate says he'll step down. And Gwen Moore's son, Supreme Solar Allah, I didn't make that up, is running for the Milwaukee County Board. But we start with a debate over school accountability. Now, everybody says they're for accountability, but who should hold schools accountable? Bureaucrats, politicians, parents? Even among Republicans, there are no clear answers. The Assembly and the State Senate and Governor Walker all appear to be pulling in somewhat different directions. The Assembly bill calls for turning failing public schools into charter schools. And both the Assembly and the Senate bills have provisions for cutting off funding to private choice schools that get low grades. But Governor Walker appeared to hit another note last week.
Tonight, I call on members of the state legislature to pass legislation ensuring objective information is available for each and every school receiving public funds in the state. Provide the information and allow parents to make the choice. No need for bureaucrats or politicians to make that choice. I trust parents. Give them access to objective information, and they will make the choice that is best for their children.
So, in other words, information but no state sanctions. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos disagreed, telling the Associated Press last week it wouldn't be accountability then, it would just be political theater. Joining me in our panel this morning, defense attorney Dan Adams, former state representative Michelle Litchens, political strategist Linda Bruin, and the managing editor of RightWisconsin.com, Colin Roth. So we'll start with you, Colin Roth. You have conservatives versus conservatives on this issue. Is it accountability if you don't have some sort of a consequence for failure?
Sure it is, and I think what we're looking at is kind of different philosophies on accountability, and the more laissez-faire approach would say give parents the information, they can make their choice. There might be very good reasons for a parent to want to send their school to a low performing school, but at the end of the day, there's a conservative philosophy that might say, you know what, we don't really trust the DPI, we don't really trust unelected boards, we don't really trust lawmakers whose the legislature can shift in party makeup. Leave it up to the parents.
Okay, Dan Adams.
Well, I completely agree, and I'm going to lose my Democrat card here, but with Speaker Vos, I mean, we have to start putting in place concrete ways to cut off funding from schools that are failing our kids, and that has to be for district schools, charter schools, and choice schools. Right now, choice schools are getting more or less a free pass in the product that they deliver to our kids. They're unaccountable, they're untransparent.
Well, they're accountable to the people who choose them, though, right? Isn't that a form of accountability?
Well, but they cloak what the results are by not using the same tests and whatnot that district schools are. I think across those three sectors, we should have apples-to-apples comparisons and start.
So you don't trust parents?
No, I absolutely do, and anybody who watches this show knows I'm a choice guy.
Michelle Litchens, it's very unusual to have a disagreement between Robin Vos and Scott Walker on this, and it comes down to this question, do you need something more than the letter grades?
I think you do need more than the letter grades. We have seen for years Milwaukee parents have had choice, and thousands of them have chosen to send their children to voucher schools, and those underperforming schools are still there, many of which have 60% occupancy in their schools, and those are the schools that have the highest police calls. So we need to make sure we as a state are servicing those kids who aren't learning in those underperforming schools.
Okay, Linda Bruin.
I don't understand why we can't do both. Why don't we get the reliable, objective information on all schools, not just charter or public schools or whatever, but on all of them so they can be compared to each other. But at the local level, I think there needs to be some sort of local trigger mechanism where a school that performs so badly that they're removed.
I do think this comes down to this matter of trust in terms of, as I watch the debate play out, one of the original proposals was to create this review board, but it would have been dominated by appointees of the state education bureaucracy. And the state education bureaucracy, first of all, has a very bad track record holding public schools accountable, and has a very bad track record when it comes to school choice. There's a certain amount of distrust. But I do think that this is an interesting debate here. I mean, I trust parents, and I think that the marketplace works. On the other hand, Milwaukee Public Schools is a pretty good example. If you have a school that by its own benchmarks is not doing what it wants to do, it's not making any improvement over 7 years, at some point there has to be some consequences. There's no accountability if the taxpayers are still on the hook. So, I mean, I do trust parents, but on the other hand, don't taxpayers have the right to know whether or not their money is going into something that is a complete black hole?
I do, and I also think there are ways that the elected officials can work things out. Right now in the state constitution, DPI is in charge of education for the state, but I think there are ways that legislators can put things into state statute so that the legislature will have more oversight on who makes those decisions, on who fails and who
Colin Roth,
survives.
what is the end game here? I mean, here you have, this is the first thing out of the box for this new Republican state government, and clearly you have 3 different approaches here. How do they resolve this?
Yeah, politically this is very interesting as you kind of see them all going in separate directions. If you kind of look at the 3 approaches, I think the Senate bill actually kind of threads the needle a little bit. There are things that are good in the Assembly bill, and I think Walker's approach might be a little bit too laissez-faire, especially if he wants to propose something else.
I don't think we'll know the answer to the question of what's going to happen until we find out what's going to happen in terms of the expansion of school choice. If there is a robust expansion of school choice statewide, then you're going to have a big debate from the critics who say, where is the accountability measure? And I think then this gets fired up again. So what is your glass half full this week? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. Dan Adams, you're first.
Charlie, my glass is half full because tomorrow we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, the 35th such tribute in Wisconsin history. I'm proud to live in a country that has made a point of celebrating the life and cause of this amazing American. My glass is half empty because 47 years after MLK's death, our struggle for racial equality continues, especially when it comes to educational outcomes for black children who in this state lag behind their peers in staggering numbers.
Michelle Litchens.
My glass is half full because 200 years ago was our last battle with Great Britain, ending the War of 1812. But it is half empty because few people in our country know this. Our schools would rather teach about the evils of America's past and environmentalism than our real history.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my glass is half full because our economy has been recovering since early summer of 2014. But my glass is half empty because of Mitch McConnell's ridiculous claim that this recovery was due to voters' expectations that Republicans would win the U.S. Senate in November. Give me a break. There was no consensus last summer that Republicans would take back the Senate.
Colin Roth.
My glass is half full because the terror attacks in Paris appear to have provided the civilized world with a moment of unity and solidarity to stand up against jihadist terror. But my glass is half empty because the jihadist group Boko Haram massacred thousands of innocent people in Nigeria last week. The world hardly even noticed.
Well, my glass is half full because this season the Packers restored the mystique of Lambeau Field, going 9-0. It's half empty because they're playing in Seattle later today. Next on Sunday Inside, strange bedfellows in the fight against the proposed downtown Milwaukee streetcar. The politics of Milwaukee downtown streetcar heats up and takes an unexpected twist. Milwaukee aldermen are set to vote this week on Mayor Barrett's plan to spend $124 million on the trolley. Meanwhile, a petition campaign to force a referendum continues. That petition is backed by a coalition that includes Central City Alderman Joe Davis and Southside Alderman Bob Donovan. Another wrinkle. Last week, the Milwaukee Police Union came out against the plan, noting the police officers still face unpaid furloughs this year. And in a case of genuinely political strange bedfellows, the brother of Dontre Hamilton, who was shot by a former Milwaukee police officer, appeared in this radio ad opposing the plan.
Mayor Barrett's precious trolley symbolizes how our community is treated and represents government sanctions, racial oppression, and the continued segregation of our downtown. The trolley's key supporter, Alderman Bob Baldwin, has even admitted this project doesn't even benefit the minority community.
So where are we at here, Dan Adams? Vote scheduled this week. Which way either side have momentum on this? Can you do any head counts?
Well, I'll tell you what, this ad that you just played is brutal, and I think it's really effective at galvanizing the one community that's completely left out of the initial trolley blueprint, which is the African American community, which comprises of 40% of our city's population. This trolley doesn't reach any of those neighborhoods. As for the coupling with the MPA, well, I guess the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and for this issue and this issue alone,
it is a very, very unusual coalition that is formed here. But I understand that, you know, for a long time it was conservative talk radio, it was suburbanites, but now you're seeing Joe Davis, you're seeing Bob Donovan, you're now seeing people in the Central City community going, okay, so we're spending $124 million for a streetcar that is going to basically be servicing the upper crust of a very small sliver of downtown Milwaukee.
And in his ad, Mr. Hamilton does a roll call of all the aldermen, and I think they're going to start sweating as to whether they're really going to vote for something that doesn't affect their community.
Okay, now Alderman Puente's already flipped on this issue. He had been for it. He is now saying he's against it based on. Are you hearing that aldermen are hearing from their constituents on this? I mean, is there building public pressure?
From who I talked to and from the mayor's office's response to put out the Johnson Control story this week, I think they're sweating.
Okay, Michelle Litchins.
You know that the mayor really wants this to happen before he leaves, but he's doing a disservice to his community. He's furloughing police officers and his public employees because they don't have enough money and they don't have enough money to pay for salt for the streets, yet he wants to invest in this trolley. And I am I'm happy to see that the black community in Milwaukee is finally standing up and saying, we need money in our neck of the woods, not just on the hoity-toities downtown.
But one of the questions I would have is whether there's enough time, because this thing is very much on a fast track, and we're talking about this week, and if it is passed this week, it's going to be pretty much a done deal, right?
Well, you know, it looks like the votes are very, very close, and if it's very, very close, you may see a move to delay it yet again. Whether the mayor wants that or not, that could easily happen.
Now the tip-off will be which side wants to delay it.
Yeah.
If you see the supporters of the streetcar delay it, you realize that really the worm is turned on this issue.
Yeah, and I think I have no issue. In fact, I don't support the streetcar, but I don't have a problem with Mike Crivello and the Milwaukee police officers saying, look, if you're spending money on operating costs for this, you're not spending money on our officers. That makes sense. But I do take an issue with some of the things that Nate Hamilton was saying. I don't see how that this is representative of government sanctions and racial oppression. So I think that goes a little far and strengthens some credibility issues.
Briefly. Yeah, I think we're seeing the debate we need to have in which people are starting to realize that this is a major project that costs a lot of money, and there's some serious problems in this city that deserve attention.
I think the new development is that there are cracks on the left. You are seeing some of the transit advocates coming out against it. You are seeing voices from the Central City coming out against it. So this is no longer a right versus left issue. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Dan Adams, you're first.
To Scott Walker, just reject the casino in Kenosha already and allow that community to move on to better economic development priorities. Local casinos don't create wealth, they capture it. Supporting small, scalable enterprises in southeastern Wisconsin is a better bet.
Michelle Litchins.
To Mike Huckabee and others, families and children of elected officials are off limits, always.
Linda Bruin.
Well, my advice is to Mitt Romney. A lot of folks, including a lot of Republicans, aren't too happy about you potentially getting back into the presidential race. Perhaps the third time won't be the charm.
Colin Roth.
My advice is for everyone in politics and the media, can we please cut the charade that Scott Walker might be running for president? He is. It's happening. It's no longer a question.
No, that train's going. Well, last week, Arizona became the first state to require high school graduates to pass a basic civics test, the same one on the U.S. citizenship test. My advice to the Wisconsin legislature, this isn't a good idea. It is an outstanding idea. You should get on board that, too. Next on Sunday Insight, state Democrats will have to pick a new leader. Mike Tate is stepping down. Congressman Paul Ryan says that he's not running for president in 2016. Ryan says he prefers to devote his efforts to his new job as chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. Meanwhile, the state's Democrat Party chair Mike Tate said he's had enough. He'll step down in June. Tate has been the chairman since 2009 and has presided over 3 losses to Republican Scott Walker, the loss of both houses of the state legislature in 3 consecutive elections, 2 congressional seats, and a seat in the U.S. Senate. But, of course, there was Tammy Baldwin. So I suppose you could say that his record was mixed, right, Michelle Litchens? Mixed record?
You know, I think being chair of any state party is a challenge, and it requires a lot of work and effort. And obviously, the state of Wisconsin was moving in the right direction because the Republicans have been doing the right thing, and the Democrats were not doing the right thing before 2010. So I'm not going to blame Mike Tate for their loss completely, but I think that the Democrats are going to look for somebody new, and he's moving on to greener pastures.
It is an extraordinary track record, though, for Mike Tate. And quite frankly, not only did he preside over the, when he became chairman of the state Democratic Party, Democrats controlled everything. And he lost virtually everything. But I also think that he helped contribute to the, and a lot of people did as well, contribute to the really, really toxic nature of Wisconsin politics. When he stands up there, talking about, putting Scott Walker in a jail cell, that changes the debate and the tone of politics in Wisconsin. So who's the front runner to replace him, Linda Bruin?
I actually think it's Jason Ray. I mean, I don't think we know yet all of the candidates that are going to come out. Winnicke, of course, is running.
Jason Ray is about 12 years old, right?
No, he's about 31, 32. Okay. But I think you're saying that because he was the youngest person ever elected to the Democratic DNC, the National Committee. So
they're not going to go back to Joe Winnicke?
Well, Winnicke's got experience, and Jason Ray has got knowledge of modern campaigning. So it'll be an interesting twist if it's just the 2 of them. But frankly, there could be other people that'll get in the race as well.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, and Jason Ray's a good guy, and I think he's qualified to do the job. One thing that we can criticize Mike Tate for is not being able to derail the march to a recall election for Scott Walker, which we know, of course, he won, he was emboldened, and he was reelected on the heels of that. He could have stepped in and said, WEAC asked me, you don't run the Democratic Party, I run the Democratic Party. We're going to wait until the next regular election cycle. Would have had a lot of pent-up frustration. Maybe we wouldn't have Scott Walker right now.
Okay, Colin Roth.
I don't think that was ever going to happen. That train was moving pretty fast. But I think you're absolutely right, Charlie. I think Mike Tate, his real legacy is kind of the toxic rhetoric that came out of the party, and really, the debate in this state got really nasty, particularly under him and Graham Zielinski. So, moving on.
Yeah, I do think the party moved to that sort of hard left. Also, you look back. I saw some commentators who were giving him credit for the amount of money they raised. Fine. But also, you look at the lack of a bench. Yep. You look at the strategy which pushed people out of primaries. He handpicked Mary Burke. The last 5 years, really, under normal circumstances, I would say it doesn't matter who the state chairman is, but there's no question his fingerprints are all over the Democratic failures of the last 5 years.
Well, I was just going to say, in fairness to him, the crisis that hit the Democratic Party in the state of Wisconsin with Act 10 and other, it was unprecedented, and I think it would have been difficult for anyone.
Okay, what is it that you don't get this week? Let's go around the table, Dan Adams.
How the all-women's school Mount Holyoke College canceled its yearly feminist play, The Vagina Monologues. The reason? The play has been labeled transphobic because it doesn't include scripts for transgendered people. Wait, the vagina monologues aren't politically correct enough?
Yeah, try to keep up. Michelle Litchens.
What I don't get is why Barack Obama didn't feel the need to go to France or send anyone there like any other major country in the world.
Linda Bruin.
Well, what I don't get is the rising tide of British anti-Semitism. Recent polls show that nearly half of all Britons hold anti-Semitic views, and 1 in 8 think Jews use talking about the Holocaust to get sympathy. Why is this happening?
Colin Roth.
What I don't get is how months after initiating the air campaign against ISIS in Syria, the group has actually solidified their control over more territory. Does anyone care that we aren't exactly winning over there?
Well, a new poll shows overwhelming support for right-to-work legislation here in Wisconsin. So what I don't get is why so many Republicans are going wobbly on an issue backed by more than 60% of voters. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Dan Adams, you're first.
My winners are typical borrow and spend Republicans who seem to reign supreme in Madison by signaling they're going to reject even a modest increase in gas taxes and cower for their road-building lobbyist buddies. The Wisconsin GOP continues to embrace crony capitalism. My losers are younger Wisconsin taxpayers, borrowing and diverting general fund money for expensive highway expansion instead of pay-as-you-go policies hurt us all in the long run.
Michelle Litchens.
My winner is the FBI and our federal law enforcement for protecting us from the crazy Islamic homegrown terrorists, just like the one they thwarted in Ohio last week. Thank you for keeping us safe. My loser is the Obama administration for not only failing to attend the march in France to show solidarity with the free world, but also for standing firm on not saying Islamic extremists. Mr. President, you must call these thugs what they are, and they are extremists.
Linda Bruin.
Well, I have two winners. Like Michelle, on Wednesday, the FBI agents saved many American lives by arresting the would-be terrorist Christopher Cornell before he could attack his own country by bombing our capital and shooting people as they fled. And on Thursday, Belgium counterterrorism agents raided an ISIS-backed terrorist cell who was about to carry out major attacks. My loser is Indianapolis Colts linebacker Josh McNary, who's been charged with rape in what appears to be a pretty serious and clear-cut case.
Colin Roth.
My winner this week, or last week, is the Big Ten. As a Michigan fan, it pains me to recognize Ohio State, but the Buckeyes dominated the national championship against highly touted Oregon and proved the Big Ten was perhaps underrated all year. My loser this week are Republicans like Senator Jerry Petrowski, who are unwilling to support right to work despite the support of 62% of Wisconsinites.
Well, my winner, Packer fans. Win or lose later today, Packer fans got another championship season this year. Don't take it for granted, and don't take it for granted that we are watching one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Loser, Mike Tate. I would list all of the ways the boy chairman of the Democratic Party has been a loser over the past 5 years, but I'd run out of time. Republicans are going to miss him. Thanks for joining us. Join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week, and go Packers.